Next week, when the elders meet, we shall vote to discontinue your Obstacle project. We feel that giving you $3 billion annually would be better spent elsewhere.
$3 billion is nothing compared to...
We've won. People no longer care about their civil liberties. They care about their standard of life. The modern world has outgrown notions like freedom. They're content to follow.
The threat remains while free will exists. For centuries we've tried, with religion, with politics, and now consumerism, to eliminate dissent. Isn't it time we gave science a try?
And I think there's an element in the thinking of some people. We don't want people to be educated, healthy and confident because they would get out of control. The top 1% of the world's population own 80% of the world's wealth. It's incredible that people put up with it, but they're poor, they're demoralized, they're frightened, and therefore they think perhaps the safest thing to do is take orders and hope for the best.
Joe Biden has publicly said that he wants a new world order and a regime change in Russia. But if you think that he wants a new world order and a regime change in Russia, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? Hello there, you 5.3 million awakening wonders. We continue to journey, don't we, against the odds in spite of the obstacles. You know they want you dumb, don't you, that they need you docile and compliant. You noticed it when you was at school. You've seen it your whole life. It continues still. The endless bombardment of muddying information. A little while ago on the telly or whatever, Joe Biden goes, I want a new world order. And he also said, I want a regime change in Russia. And the mainstream media, those guys, the corporate media, the legacy media, you use your phrase, let me know in the comments what you prefer, said, the conspiracy theorists, just because Joe Biden's saying he wants a new world order and a regime change, they're thinking he wants a regime change and a new world order. I mean, it's not as if America has a long, rich history of changing regimes and trying to establish a new world order, is it? Joe Biden either said those things by mistake, or he said them because they're sort of on his mind and that.
And now's the time when things are shifting. There's gonna be a new world order out there.
Oh, what? Hang about.
There's gonna be a new world order out there.
Ixnay on the new world order, nay! Ixnay on the new world order! Now, let's face it, this channel has been subject to some criticism over recent weeks for talking about what are dubbed conspiracy theories. What I would call them are alternative narratives, often narratives that prove fruitful and true. You only need to look at the last couple of years to see the trends in media and the censorship around certain issues that have eventually become permissible to discuss.
And we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world.
What he said there, albeit in a way that was a bit boring to listen to, is that the rest of the free world should galvanise against Russia and create a new world order. Here's some headlines that were generated by that. Joe Biden's new world order comment jumped on by conspiracy theorists. Like, that's the story. Like, the story is that, rather than a trend and a history of opportunism by the United States of America. Read Naomi Klein's shock doctrine about CIA activity in Latin America and then decide whether or not this is a conspiracy theory or a description of events that occurred. Oh no, Joe Biden said New World Order and conspiracy theorists are losing it. One of the things you have to do to maintain a power structure is discredit any alternative narrative. You have to automatically do that. People that believe in alternatives are crackpots and wackos, whether that's alternative ideas around health or diet or ideology or philosophy or culture. Those people have to be dismissed out of hand because otherwise, what is it? It's a threat. You should be flattered because the reason they're bothering to condemn you is because they recognise that people are awakening. Joe Biden mentioned the New World Order and conspiracy theorists lost it. Why not look at whether or not there have been regime changes around the world? Why not have a look at whether or not there are allied forces globally that are operating coherently? So the first thing they'll do is try to hit you on the head with a conspiracy theorist hammer. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're saying stuff. You're saying stuff that's not on proper news. Shut up, conspiracy theorist. And then, like, if that don't work, if you go, no, actually, this is not conspiracy theorist, I can rationally explain to you exactly what I mean. Well, you don't care about Ukrainian people, do you? What about Ukrainian people? I do care about about Ukrainian people. I'm just actually trying to understand this situation using information outside of the sources issued to me by people that possibly benefit from a sustained state of war globally, continually. Talking of conspiracy theories, here are some conspiracy theories that actually happened. US intervention. Let's just list them. Between 1947 and 1989, the United States tried to change other nations' governments 72 times. I mean, if you do anything 72 times, if it was like goals scored from free kicks or 3-pointers scored in basketball, you'd say, well done. It includes 66 covert operations and 6 overt ones. Well, that's more than a hobby, isn't it? Also, by the way, it's not a right-wing thing or a left-wing thing, is it? Because you've had, over that course of time, you've had everyone have a little go. And what I contest is there ain't no bloody real difference. Most US secret wars were against other democratic states. What he's saying in his speech and the bits we're meant to take seriously, not that bit's good, no, he meant that bit, no, he didn't mean that bit, oh, that was a fart, he didn't mean that bit. Then the main thrust was, we're going to do democracy, we're going to have a big lightning democracy show, right? Well, they were doing secret wars against democratic states, so is it right or is it wrong? Haven't you noticed that these days? The peculiar elasticity and then sudden rigidity of morality. Morality can go, whoop, we're allowed to do this now. You mustn't say that. You mustn't say that. That was wrong. Like, what is it then? No one's got any principles. No one's got any actual values. Globally, there were 117 partisan electoral interventions between 1946 and 2000. The majority of these, almost 70% of them, were by the US. 21 such interventions took place between 1990 and 2000, of which 18 were by the US. They're the Beatles of interventions. 60 different independent countries have been the targets of such interventions. 2/3 of interventions were done in secret, with voters having no idea that foreign powers were actively trying to influence the results. Now, I don't know what that is, a conspiracy theory or what, but it don't sound like democracy, does it? Our friend Caitlin Johnston, the great writer, says, all the self-righteous posturing by the Western political media class about the need to pour weapons into Ukraine is not really about saving Ukrainian lives. Only negotiating a ceasefire can do that. That makes sense, doesn't it? But about seizing this golden opportunity to hurt Russia's geostrategic interests as much as possible. Oh, conspiracy theory. Ukraine, on its own, is powerless to stop Russia from taking Kiev, no matter how many weapons are sent, but those weapons can be used to fight a long, bloody insurgency, which costs many more lives, keeps Moscow militarily preoccupied and hemorrhaging money, and ultimately hurts Putin's popularity at home. This by itself will do a great deal to advance US interests, but on top of that, you've got the even greater benefit of manufacturing international consent for unprecedented acts of economic warfare against the entire nation of Russia, as well as killing Nord Stream 2 and rallying immense support for NATO and the imperial military intelligence machine. Not when you remind yourself, between 1947 and 1989, the United States tried to change other nations' governments 72 times. Yeah, but 73, we would never do that. It includes 66 covert operations, so most of the time, they didn't tell you. Only 6 times. Like, look at the headlines again. New World Order jumped on by conspiracy theories. Oh, where's your tinfoil hat? Well, where my tinfoil hat is over there. Here are my files of times where this happened again and again and again in the past. And attempting to understand American foreign policy does not exonerate Russians' actions in Ukraine. And the reason we're not talking about that particularly is because that's already on the news. You can watch that stuff whenever you want. It's a tragic, awful, terrible situation. But what it isn't is a passport to not discussing the complex realities, the historical global narratives, for which there's considerable evidence. And I think ignoring that would not make you like, I don't know, some patriot of kindness, but a sort of idiot.
This story has been 30 years in the making. The murder of Daniel Morgan back in 1987 has taken several inquiries and murder investigations and cost approximately £50 million to taxpayers to try to find out the truth. In this most recent inquiry, they have revealed that the Metropolitan Police is institutionally corrupt in relation to covering up and trying to not take responsibility for the mistakes in relation to the murder of Daniel Morgan. Before we speak about the results of the inquiry, I'd like to mention the Metropolitan Police's official statement. They are very dismissive, as expected, and they say that this was 34 years ago and they have transformed a lot in the homicide and major investigation team. But the report says that this institutional corruption is not historic. They say that it still exists in the Metropolitan Police. And they go on to also say in the independent panel report I've seen a lot of different opinions and reports and interpretations of this in the media. I wasn't born when this happened, so I had to watch a lot and listen to a lot and read a lot of information, as I advise yourself to do as well, not just watching this video. That's why I'm going to provide the official independent inquiry report so you can read it for yourself, because I don't think any of the media outlets have really covered it in a way that just lets you know the story. Everybody has taken bits from it to put across their political angle, but I'm going to try to tell it in a way so you just understand the story and can make your own decision. The murder of Daniel Morgan on the 10th of March 1987 left his wife without a husband and his 2 children, Sarah and Dan, without a father. He was killed in the car park of the Golden Lion pub in Sydenham, South East London. He was a private investigator and his business was called Southern Investigation. Allegations of police misconduct of many different kinds by different officers of the Metropolitan Police have been made over the years. And in relation to the summary from 1987 to 2021 in the report, they said that from the outset, there has been allegations that there was involved in murder, and the corruption by the police somehow played a part, who committed it from being brought to justice in 2011. The Metropolitan Police publicly admitted for the first time that corruption had been a factor in the failure of the first investigation. There was evidence of a culture within the Metropolitan Police in 1987 that permitted the very close association proposed to it as well, and also individuals linked to crime. There is extensive evidence of police officers meeting DS Sidney Fillery, Jonathan Rees and others, and some had been arrested and continued to be suspects for the murder of Daniel Morgan. There is no evidence that the investigation of Daniel Morgan was discussed on some of these occasions, and that Jonathan Rees used social interactions to obtain information about the investigation. There had been indications since 1987 that Daniel Morgan was going to report about police corruption, and he was going to sell a story about corruption to the media. The nature of that corruption has never been established, and there has been a number of possibilities. Some of them were never fully examined, they say in the inquiry, and there was a connection between the recovery by Daniel Morgan of a Range Rover from Malta in 1987 and a major fraud investigation being conducted by West Yorkshire Police. It's very possible that local officers involved identified lucrative corrupt practices, such as selling confidential information, assisting criminals with inside police information, and also moonlighting throughout their police careers because their pensions were under threat. The evidence supporting the theory as why Daniel Morgan was involved in revealing this corruption was never investigated. In the years following his murder, several of the police connected to Daniel Morgan's circles and businesses were investigated and convicted of serious crime. DS Sidney Fillery was a Freemason and became master of 2 different lodges in 1993 and 1992. 10 police officers who were prominent in the Daniel Morgan investigation were Freemasons as well. Investigating officers entertained doubts as to whether Masonic loyalties that Freemasons are sworn to uphold might have conflicted with what the police officers owe to each other. And this is something that I've not seen in any of the publications by any of the press. Nobody's mentioned the fact that every single person in this was a member of the Freemasons. This isn't a conspiracy, this is a fact. They openly say in the report that this was common knowledge. So what I don't get is why all of these different publications have just told you what they want to tell you and their version of events, but not one of them has mentioned the fact that this involved 10 Freemasons and one of them was a Grand Master. They go on to say in the report that policing has been a profession they understand that officers stand together, and they call it the Blue Wall. The Blue Wall existed to enable the support and the fight against crime. Those working in policing are often in a unique position to bring evidence of wrongdoing by colleagues to their superiors. However, in some circumstances, police officers have sought to hide this wrongdoing and also look down on people that don't. And there is a brilliant example that I covered on the channel recently of 4 police officers that were convicted of doing exactly this. One of them beat somebody up and then all 4 of them covered it up. And this was only a couple of months ago, and it was a different police force as well. So it shows that there is definitely a problem, and it still exists as well, where they will cover up for each other. And in relation to who the Freemasons are and what they do, it's very difficult to be sure. They say that they do a lot of charity work and they're hundreds of years old and they've got a lot of history and they do a lot of good things to the community. But critics would say that they control a lot of aspects of society. And very recently in 2018, the former chair of the Police Federation, Steve White, said that all the members of the Police Federation that are against progression in the police force are actually Freemasons. He said a lot of them are blocking reforms to policing in relation to hiring more women and also black and ethnic minority police officers. So God knows why this officer feels like that is the case, but obviously that is supported by saying that there is no women in the Freemasons, and I think they may have started to take some women on, but for hundreds of years there has been no women at all. And there are rules about Freemasonry where when they are there, they do not discuss religion or politics, but every single one of them has a massive input in both of them areas. The leader of the Grand Lodge of Freemasons in England said that this was not the case and they were not trying to stop any reform or having any influence on the policing system. So what a big coincidence that several officers involved in the case closely were Freemasons, and a former Police Federation officer saying that Freemasons influenced the police force. So again, I don't know much about it. I'm going to have to research some more on Freemasonry and also try and maybe do a documentary. I might try to contact them and try to find out what they have to say about this. So I really appreciate you joining me today. Rest in peace to Daniel Morgan and my condolences to his family. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and check out our website at Scarcity Studios. Peace.
對我嚟講，黑社會係一種都市傳說，因為我住嘅社區係冇呢一回事。
When you get up in the morning and you go down to the tea restaurant and you get on the ride in the minibus, in this process there will be two private businesses involved. Even you can't see them, but they are part of your life.
The police force were under fire for their delayed response after a suspected gang indiscriminately attacked commuters in attacks at Yuan Long MTR station on Sunday.
不過當時場面實在太混亂咯，佢好似睇緊死亡 VR 咁。
Masked and armed with metal poles and wooden sticks, the men beat people.
嗱，現場睇嘅話係冇見到任何警察嘅。
基本上元朗嘅鄉村嘅政治人物都有黑社會聯繫或者背景，呢個係公開嘅秘密嚟嘅。
聽叫條例啦，難聽嘅就係暴力解決問題啦。
呢一場有一啲疑似係由政府勢力支持嘅黑勢力去襲擊，無差別地襲擊市民，一般市民。我係 Gwyneth Ho 何桂藍，今年29歲。當時我係一個網上媒體嘅記者啦。咁中國政府一直都好想透過一個表面上係民主，事實上係不民主嘅立法會選舉，去製造一個假象，同全世界講啊，香港人咧其實係可以投票選自己嘅代表，香港有一定程度嘅民主嘅，佢哋唔係受壓榨嘅咁樣。基本上我哋嘅選舉同伊朗已經冇乜分別。
戰國家嘅主權，觸碰一國兩制呢個底線，而且係傷害民族嘅感情。
Police arrested more than 500 people this week and used pepper rounds, water cannons, and tear gas to suppress protests.
所以對我嚟講，嗰個民主運動其實係一個求生嘅本能。所以呢場示威又好，特別係721，其實就係揭露咗呢一個真相出嚟。香港人，我哋自己嘅權利。我哋嘅人身安全其實從來都係冇保障。咁當時其實喺7月21號咧，喺上環，亦即係中聯辦嘅所在地，有一個非常之大型嘅示威。
Some of those protesters made their way to the Beijing Liaison Office, the representation of mainland China in the semi-autonomous territory. At the same time, in the new territories, men dressed in white and fully masked decided to attack commuters on a suburban train.
咁但係喺我未出門口嘅時候咧，已經見到網上流傳嘅一段片段。就係有一位廚師喺放工嘅時候經過元朗一個叫做雞地嘅地方，然後嗰位廚師係俾人用藤條打到成個背脊都係傷痕。咁我就話同公司講好唔好我去元朗望一望咧咁樣。咁當時可能我同好多香港人都仲係好天真咁樣覺得地鐵站呢一啲地方唔會有衝突發生。現場仲係有一啲市民係唔知道個情況係但。咁我嗰時應該係企喺呢個位度嘅，咁就做直播啦。咁咁啱有位着粉紅色衫嘅人咧，就喺嗰度褪翻過嚟，就打閘入邊嘅人。咁佢喺嗰個位，佢發現咗我，咁跟住就開始打我啦。咁有一位我本身認識嘅朋友啦，加拉利歐啦，咁佢本身喺閘機入邊嘅，咁佢又見到我 Ben， 佢就又出嚟想拉我走。
保護完個記者之後就成口血啦，咁主要後來睇翻都係知個人中位爆咗啦，即係呢一度啦。大部分都係啲普通嘅街坊啊、市民啊、女仔啊。
着住白衫嘅市民圍埋一齊，係圍毆啊！
咁當時就其實市民都離開得七七八八啦，咁但係就遇到第二次嘅襲擊啦，回家嘅市民當時並冇任何政治色彩嘅抗爭示威遊行喺元朗發生，呢一場係一場白衣人單方面掀起嘅無差別恐怖襲擊，呢個係一個鐵一般嘅事實。
feel 到有啲人嘅衣着同埋個行為比較似一啲黑社會，即係真係有戴金鏈啊，或者手臂有紋身啊，或者啲
即係大家都知道喺大陸黑社會都有愛國的。我覺得係即係國家勢力係好中意用一啲追查唔到、來歷不明、你冇辦法 hold them accountable 嘅勢力去整治一啲反對嘅聲音。我會覺得呢一啲疑似黑勢力其實係國家權力嘅延伸咯。
One very alarming dimension is the use of ununiformed thugs. There's no way a Chinese official could credibly suggest that they'd never heard of this problem before. It's thugs for hire, by the local police, by the provincial authorities.
而喺好快講緊係幾日嘅情況之內，已經組織可以攞到幾百條藤條，係講緊唔係普通人啦，係粗藤條有雙鋼珠嘅藤條，派發去各個鄉委會。呢啲咁快嘅組織行為，其實你唔會 expect 香港嘅鄉委會佢哋會做到，佢哋做嘢不嬲好慢。當香港出現兩極化嘅政治爭拗嘅時候，會動用黑社會。我覺得政權不斷去試探點樣去利用黑社會嘅行為。
若然你話係差人完全係冇份介入嘅，我真係唔信咯。黑社會同政府嘅關係都係建基於差人嗰邊嘅啫。若然唔係經差人呢個渠道搭橋嘅，政府都唔會介入到香港黑社會呢邊。
警察同埋黑幫嗰個交往，咁我哋當然係去拉佢啦，我哋係打擊佢啦咁樣。咁好多時候拉之前，可能我哋又會接觸啲線人，佢哋可能亦都有啲黑社會背景。好多人誤以為我哋同佢哋有一個好好嘅關係。咁其實咧，咁喺警隊裏邊咧，其實係有唔同嘅單位咧，去專注就係做呢個反黑嘅工作。就算你一個係喺街上邊巡邏嘅警察，亦都要收集情報。每一單呢啲咁樣嘅壞蘋果都嫌多，而警員去做黑社會工作嘅時候，都有一個好完善嘅制度去審查，確認佢係一個適合嘅人員去做一啲反黑工作。我哋係絕對唔會容忍呢一樣嘢嘅。
差佬同黑社會，佢哋都要取個平衡，所以好多時，若然如果係黑社會暗砍嗰邊，佢哋個平衡失咗嘅話，差佬會介入。但係若然係冇失到平衡，差佬基本上係唔會處理嘅。咁其實CID 又好啦，重案都好啦，基本上佢哋冇話斷年咁樣計啦。總之某段時間，佢哋都要有一個數目係代表佢哋有做嘢，有拉夠人。而黑社會嗰邊咧，佢哋就會將最低層嗰啲就擺出嚟，就供應俾差人嗰邊嚟拉。所以呢個就可以簡稱要交數啦。
冇得返轉頭咯，個信任已經完全被破壞。但係其實你對比下佢哋整治示威者嗰個辦案嘅速度、提堂嘅速度、審訊嘅速度，同埋而家元朗呢一單案件有清晰嘅人證物證，有清晰嘅現場記錄，仲要係冇刪剪過嘅現場記錄。我哋淨係見到個單案不斷咁被拖延，亦都有好多人可以保釋到出嚟。咁我相信自有公論啦呢件事。
The triad society is not fading. In fact, some of them is getting more powerful and more infiltrated into the Hong Kong community. As the purpose of the triad society is profit making. So as long as you could pay, then they will be happy to do things for you. I think that's the #1 principles of the triad society. And of course, it's very important for triad members to protect their vested interests. So think about it. What if they do something that is against the government? And they will be very likely for them to risk their existing businesses. And it will be risk them to be targeted by the police. So do you think they would do that? It's of course not.
Well, okay. Let's think a bit more about the allegory. The sun is the truth of everything in some sense. It's a first principle of everything else. We know these people are supposed to be like us. He didn't ever tell us who these people were. Who do you think those people might be? Any ideas? Yeah.
Maybe those in power, those who like to keep others in the dark.
So these people are most definitely in a position of extraordinary power, right? Because whatever they hold up determines the opinions and beliefs and attitudes of everybody else. They are in a position of incredible power. In our society, who might these people be? Who are the opinion makers? That's what these people are. They're the opinion makers. Yeah, the government, which shapes opinions by making laws that, right, that encourage certain behaviors, discourage other kinds of behaviors, encourage certain attitudes, discourage others. So the state.
Teachers and mentors.
Teachers. You could really get into a kind of Pink Floyd-y kind of interpretation here of teachers. You know, leave those kids alone, stop indoctrinating them into whatever ideology it is that the teachers are trying to indoctrinate them into. And of course, parents. Good parenting is just another way of, say, brainwashing your children, right? Because you want your children to believe this, and you don't want them to believe that, and you do a whole bunch of things to try to encourage them to believe that it's good to share, and you know, be honest and don't tell lies, and all of these other kinds of things.
Religious leaders?
Religious leaders, priests and ministers of whatever stripes who are shaping the opinions and beliefs of their flock, as it were. One more big one, I think.
I think the media.
Yeah. You know, where do people get a lot of their opinions and ideas that they have about what love is and what marriage is supposed to look like? But from, you know, television shows and movies and all of the music that we listen to. It's a powerful force in shaping people's opinions. So good. All right. So last bit of the allegory, you have these sort of two worlds. You've got the base of the cave, and then this world outside of the cave. What does Socrates say these two worlds stand for? What is the base of the cave?
Society.
Society, it certainly is the world of kind of conventional opinion and conventional, you know, practice.
Ignorance.
These people are definitely ignorant, because what is ignorance? Ignorance is misnaming things, right? Saying something is X when it's not X. But he gives more of a metaphysical interpretation himself. Metaphysics is that branch of philosophy that studies reality. And he says on page 5, that this world down here is the sensible world. It's, you know, the physical world. And this world up here, he says, is the intellectual world, the world of ideas. And so there is a sort of really interesting metaphysical claim here that Plato seems to think that mental reality, the world of ideas and of intelligence, is more real than the material world where things change all the time and they come and go. You might think of it in this way. The idea of a triangle is a three-sided enclosed figure whose interior angles sum to 180 degrees. That's an idea. Now, you know, there are material triangles, but those material triangles, they come and go. They don't last very long. In that sense, they're like shadows. They appear, but then they disappear. Whereas the idea, it remains always and forever, so long as there's at least so long as there's a mind to think it. For us, though, if you want to get into the cool metaphysical interpretations, take a philosophy class. For us, here's a bit sort of a toned down interpretation of it. This is the world of conventional opinion. People here have just accepted what they've been shown. They haven't thought about it. They are very passive observers and passive inheritors of the opinions that they have. This process here, as we'll talk about in a minute, is a process of getting educated. And if nothing else, the person who escapes the cave is sort of critically appropriating and inquiring into the beliefs that he has, which is a timely thing, right? You're all about to start college. And you've inherited a whole bunch of opinions from your parents and your pastors and your priests and your friends and the media and all the whole rest of it. The super exciting thing about the thing you get to do now is think about it. I've always been told that this is true. Do I think it is? Why do I think it's true? Are there good reasons for thinking it? Right? And a kind of critical assessment of those kinds of things.
The theories of energy by Nikola Tesla have been revolutionary, to say the least. But for some mysterious reason, history does not dwell enough on his story.
The U.S. government sat on Tesla's entire estate for 10 years. Did they keep any of his papers?
I read that some people claim that Tesla saw the Great Pyramid as a power generator.
All the pyramids had an explosion, and maybe all at the same time.
Did you know that the word pyromene in Latin means fire in the middle?
Crashed into one of the towers.
Before Tesla, you could only send electricity 1 mile just for lighting. After Tesla, you could run factories 400, 500, 600 miles in all directions.
They get a story and they repeat it over and over. They have no proof of any of it. They never found a mummy in a pyramid.
Did Nikola Tesla find the secret to unlimited energy? And is there a plot to hide his findings?
Energy, the ultimate power. When I think about it, I find that most wars that have been waged in the past years have been about the control of what provides energy. And if I'm to talk about energy, then I must mention Nikola Tesla. I still remember my physics teacher at school saying that Tesla was an exceptional genius whose work is behind many important inventions. The story of energy might be quite mysterious. Tesla was a scientist, but some people say that he was mystical. They claim he believed the Egyptian Great Pyramids were key to limitless energy, an energy that could be distributed to everyone in the world for free. He was a controversial personality even after his death. They say that after he died alone in his hotel room in New York, the FBI confiscated all his belongings, taking all his documents with them. And for many years, they say they were classified, and even until now, many people claim there are documents missing. One of Tesla's most spectacular projects was the Wardenclyffe Tower that was in New York. With it, he wanted to send wireless electricity across the globe.
What can you tell me about Tesla's towers?
It's a very sad story. In 1898, he was doing big experiments in downtown New York City, and it was scary. So he moved all the way out to Colorado to test his wireless inventions and met with J.P. Morgan, and Morgan gave him $150,000 to build a tower. Tesla read an article that Marconi was using his equipment, and he freaked out. So he doubled the size of the tower because he figured, I'm not going to just send impulses from New York to London. If I build a tower twice that height, I can send it all over the world, and Morgan will make even more money. So Morgan was in Europe at the time, and when Morgan returned, he found out that Tesla ran out of money, but he'd also doubled the size of the tower from 90 feet to 180 feet. So That was one of the reasons Morgan pulled the funding. But Morgan didn't just pull the funding, he blocked other investors. And the reason he blocked Tesla, I think, is because he was partly afraid that maybe Tesla was right. Maybe you could send electrical power without wires. And Morgan had rubber plantations, you have the rubber around the wires. He had copper mines, he had lumber yards. He wanted telephone poles, he wanted wires, he wanted to sell copper, he wanted to sell rubber.
After Tesla died, what happened to his inventions and documents and manuscripts?
The US government sat on Tesla's entire estate for 10 years. So from 1943 to about 1952, until they finally released it, and now his estate is in Belgrade. And the question that you're really asking is, did they keep any of his papers? I don't know if they did, and it wouldn't surprise me if indeed that has occurred.
Also, the pyramids in Egypt and the Wardenclyffe Tower are both built on aquifers. With the Wardenclyffe Tower, the water was there to aid the grounding. He was transmitting through ground, and the water lowered the resistance in the ground and made it a conductor. The pyramids, that's also the case. Not only are they water-powered, they are built above an aquifer, and they sat in pools, we think. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was low frequency. So is the Great Pyramid. That's another similarity. Both have the capability to transmit worldwide.
It seems that there can be a similarity in principles between the energy tower built by Tesla and the Great Pyramids built by ancient Egyptians. Could this be a coincidence? And why has there been no one until today who tried using this technology? These are questions that require another journey to search for answers. Energy is simply power. That's why I see the most important structures today are not palaces or skyscrapers or cemeteries. I think structures like dams, oil rigs, and nuclear power plants are the most important, because these are the factories of energy, hence power. Yet when we look at the Great Pyramids of Giza, are we supposed to think they were no more than giant tombs? If financing Tesla hadn't stopped, he could have succeeded in providing the world with clean energy at low cost. Does that mean Tesla could have changed the world?
The entire world was connecting. That feeling wasn't a feeling at all, but a truth. Whether we feel connected or not, we are connected. That is how I want you to live without me, without word.